show.
Hi guys, Sebastian Gorka here with Margie Ross. Can I say my publisher?
Absolutely.
My
Please
publisher. The person, the force behind Regnery, the most important publishing house in America that brings you reliable books, conservative books, books that are about the principles upon which our republic was founded. And we are here to talk about book number 3. Why did you ask me to write this book, Margie?
Because I love working with you, and books
Oh,
1 and 2 were so great.
She's such a good fibber. This is the man who is the slowest writer, who has a publisher who is like Job in her patience. But really, the philosophy, why this book, they're crazy. They've gone insane. When you have, I think there was a turning point in American history with the Kavanaugh hearings. When you see a man who's clearly a good man, a godly man, who's accused by politicians for political purposes of being a serial rapist in school, I think for a lot of Americans, everything changed. They realized that the left had truly subscribed to what Alinsky said, the ends justify the means,
Absolutely.
whatever it takes.
Right.
So my goal with this was, and there was another trigger for me, there's an amazing organization, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, that keeps alive the history of what happened in the 20th century and how 100 million people died as a result of Karl Marx's philosophy. And every year they do a big survey about attitudes to socialism. And last year, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation found out, when they polled millennials, that 52% of American millennials would prefer to live in a socialist or communist America. That's reason enough. My parents suffered under fascism as children, and under communism were persecuted. My father was arrested and tortured and imprisoned by the communists. So my goal with The War for America's Soul is to document, how did we get here? How did the freest nation on God's earth get here? Map out that this isn't a coincidence, how it occurred from the Frankfurt School to Marcuse to Alinsky. So the personalities that got us to this insane place, what it's going to take to stop them, and is my old boss, Donald Trump, the man who can affect that. So here is how we got here, what it's going to take to win, and what you can do to help Donald Trump. Because 2016 was historic, but 2020, in my opinion, is going to be even more historic.
It could be even worse, and
Yeah.
certainly the left is ratcheting it up.
Look at this year.
Exactly. Look at every day the headlines show how how much more, how further they will go.
There are no limits.
There are
no limits.
I know. Well, let me also say.
Should I be signing books?
Yes.
All right.
Start signing books,
Okay.
and let me tell our viewers that they can go to premiercollectibles.com/Sebastian. To buy an autographed book, and once you do that, you can log on and ask a question of our illustrious guest. And
Live,
take
do it now.
Live questions, so he has no time to prepare. He's just off the cuff here, and I will be feeding those to him in a few minutes as we go. So that's premiercollectibles.com/Sebastian. But as you were talking, it occurred to me that with this study that you just noted by the Victims of Communism, where more than half of the young people in America think socialism is a good thing, are we losing the war for America's soul?
Yeah, this is a question I get asked a lot, and you can allow it to depress you when you look at those figures. When you look at the face of the Democrat Party today, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi don't control the Democrat Party. They've lost the reins. When you have the squad, well, I call them the 4 horsewomen of the Democrat apocalypse. When you have people who are the face of one of the 2 political parties in America who are avowed socialists, remember AOC ran as a Democrat socialist, who are avowed anti-Semites, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar calling Israel evil,
Right.
Israel has hypnotized the West. When you have AOC, a proud supporter of the boycott, divestment, sanction movement, which is just anti-Semitism in a new shape, then you go, oh my gosh, it is getting worse.
Right. It
But
can be
then-
depressing.
It can be, but then we have to remember some incredible things are happening, whether it's Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA that's going to the campuses that are pushing back on the political correctness, whether it's amazing people. A friend of mine, Austin Fletcher, who on YouTube goes under the name of Fleccas Talks, Fleccas, and he takes a camera and a microphone and he goes into the crazy Antifa demonstrations, the pink pussy hat demonstrations, and he asks these people who are clearly indoctrinated very simple questions, and by question 3, it collapses.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no...
Right.
People are indoctrinated, but it's very shallow indoctrination, which means we have a lot of work to do in terms of numbers, but it can be done, and we have to remember, and this is why I wrote The War for America's Soul. Donald Trump is the first person ever elected in America who wasn't a politician or a general.
Right.
Since Washington to Obama, the first one. He is the rank outsider, and there's a reason that we elected him. But you have to understand, it's a window. It's a window. And we have to make sure that we keep that window open in 2020,
Right.
because otherwise the crazies are going to do what they do.
They will, and frankly, the fact that the American people got so fed up that they were willing to elect somebody who had never run for office
Never,
was such
right.
an amazing statement of how little trust there is in either party and in any establishment politician.
Well, I said this when I was in the White House, and I've said it since I left the Trump administration, and it's just a statement of fact, whether you like it or not. Donald J. Trump won the election despite the GOP, not thanks to the GOP.
Absolutely
If you read books, I discuss it, I analyze it in The War for America's Soul. If you read books like Hillbilly Elegy, you realize that the Trump phenomena is a reaction from people of all political persuasions, people who are apolitical, who
Right.
say, I've been betrayed by both sides.
Yes.
Whether it's the Democrats or whether it's the Republicans, these are people who are professional politicians. They get elected and they break every promise they make. And along comes a guy who says, I'm about delivering. And I know it's shocking,
Right.
but it's a guy who actually keeps his promises.
Right.
That's how deeply politics has changed.
Yes, I agree. Well, you talked about these kids on campuses and the indoctrination that happens, and it made me think of the way you start this book.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll share with the
Sure.
listeners the story of the beginning of this book.
Yeah, so I have a foreword by my friend, my colleague at Salem Radio. I have my new radio show, the America First program, and I'm so blessed that Dennis Prager wrote an incredible foreword to the book. It's truly beautiful. And then I open with a prologue, and a prologue that I had to get my daughter's permission to write. So it's about her. My daughter is an amazing woman, and I'm blessed, my wife and I, to have her and our son. In May, she graduated from college, and the story of that graduation is really central to this book and our predicament as a nation. She went to a pretty liberal college, like most of them.
Like mine.
Like most. And I wanted this to be about her. This is her day.
Right.
So I kind of hid behind a tree, watched.
He's easy to hide, as you can
Yeah.
imagine.
I said, this is about her. My wife, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law found a place to sit amongst all the other family members in the quad, and I said, I found a tree, a big oak tree, and I hid there somewhere where I could see the stage of my daughter, but where I wouldn't be, I thought, there's got to be liberal parents here. I don't want to cause a scene. So it was fine. I needn't have worried. Halfway through the ceremony, some of the police officers from the college came up, and I thought, oh no, what now? Of course, they wanted selfies. They wanted to give me patches. These were great guys, former FBI, former Connecticut State Police, great guys. And then she came up to the stage. She was summa cum laude, amazing achievements as an athlete, as a research assistant, worked in the writing center. She had 4 jobs in college, as well as co-captain of her crew team. And then it was over. And I decided to rejoin our little party before we went on to the celebrations. And as I get separated from our group, this little slip of a girl comes up to me, must have been, 95 pounds, dripping wet. Not a graduate, because she didn't have the gown on, so she was a sister or a relative of one of the students. She walks up to me and she stretches out her hand and she says, "Are you Sebastian Gorka? Are you the Sebastian Gorka that worked in the White House?" And I smiled, I put out my hand, and I said, "Yes, that's me." In front of witnesses, she said, "Then F you, you Nazi." I was a little bit taken aback. I've had a few people, do stupid stuff in public in front of me, but never a little girl who, I could pick up with one hand. So after I regained my composure, I followed her back to her little group. It looked like her mother there, two older women, her mother, maybe her grandmother. And I said to her, "Who the hell do you think you are? My parents suffered as children under fascism. Then my father was tortured by communists. And you think you get to call me a Nazi? Who the hell do you think you are, you brainwashed little fool?" That is why this book had to be written. Because we have to understand how we got to a place where a little American girl can walk up to a 6'4", 260-pound guy who has a reputation for being a little bit scary and say what she said without being insane. And this book is about dissecting how we got here, understanding this wasn't an accident, this was a plan, and not a conspiracy theory, because I document the events, the names, the strategies, all the way back to Antonio Gramsci in an Italian prison cell, all the way through to Alinsky, to Obama, to Hillary. It's all in here. And then what is it? What do we have to do now?
Well, one of the things I really love about this book is the way you very clearly and methodically document what you call, and I think what a lot of people believed, was an attempted coup.
Right.
And that comes together very, very nicely in one of the early chapters of the book, where you walk people through how there really was a very carefully planned, concerted campaign.
See, this is why you have a publisher, to remind you what you wrote. There's the foreword by Dennis, then there's a prologue, this story to explain. This is a snapshot of insanity in America. Later on, I have interviews with two of the greatest minds on what's happening in America today. Victor Davis Hanson, I think the most important conservative mind in America today, and then Lord Conrad Black, who had negotiated with Donald Trump when he was a businessman, to explain what's going on. And then it's on the front cover, exclusive interview with my old boss. There's me and the president in the Oval Office, and then we have an exclusive interview with the president. But, and this is perhaps of greatest value to some people, because it's so hard to follow.
It is. It's so confusing.
In the last 3 years, if you say, Russia collusion or Obamagate, I mean, if you're in it, if you're researching it, it can take you a couple of hours to explain the avenues, the characters, the events, what's unmasking, what's FISA, all of this stuff. So I thought, okay, I'm going to rely upon the people who've really done the yeoman's work, who have been committed to the truth, who've been lampooned, attacked. I'm going to leverage their good work, give them credit for what they've done in the last 3 years. So Sarah Carter, John Solomon, Dan Bongino, Greg Jarrett, all of these great writers and investigative journalists, and summarize, précis, what was a coup. When you have the Obama administration deploy the CIA under John Brennan, the FBI under James Comey, the NSA under Clapper, when you have, and the DNI, when you have them deploy the most powerful intelligence and law enforcement organizations in the world to attempt entrapment of several members of the Trump administration, when you have Hillary Clinton paid $12 million to a former MI6 intelligence officer to collect propaganda material from Russian intelligence assets in Moscow to turn into the infamous Steele dossier, which is opposition research, which is then used, I'm summarizing it, but by the book, which is then used by the Obama administration to acquire illegally FISA surveillance warrants against the Trump administration. Why illegal? Because when you go in front of a judge, when you go in front of a court to get a warrant to spy on an American citizen, or any warrant for any purpose, if you are in possession of exculpatory information and you don't tell the judge, you're committing a crime. And they knew, the FBI, the DOJ, Comey knew that this was opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton, which they didn't tell the judge. So this was a silent coup to undermine a political campaign because it was Donald Trump. And then, and the most shocking thing of all, and I was in the White House when this happened, it continued after the election, after the inauguration, with Comey leaking his memos, with spying on us in the White House. So, this, 2 years, 20 years from now, what is in just the fraction of what we know already will dwarf Watergate for the rest of American history.
And I hear that question a lot.
The comparison.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we're going to get to some listener questions. So here we go. Ted in Woodbury, Minnesota asks, this is fun, Bolton.
Yes.
Good guy or bad guy?
Bolton, I consider to be a friend of mine. He is a patriot who has served this country with honor on numerous occasions. Yes, he is a good guy. He's not some dastardly, evil, neocon warmonger. That is Obama talking points. But, John, and I mean this constructively, he doesn't quite yet get the president. The job of the National Security Advisor is a tough job, one of the toughest in the administration, because you must remove yourself. You can't have an ego. You must be there to do one thing, present a palette of options, remove yourself from the equation, and allow the Commander-in-Chief to decide. I know that's what John wanted to do. If you watch the video of him about 40 minutes after the president tweeted out that this is my new national security advisor, John gave an interview on Fox to Martha McCallum, where he said, this is what the job of a national security advisor, and he nailed it.
Right.
But I think it was harder for him to actually do.
Yeah.
And he said, this is what we should do. I know this is what we should do, because he's so experienced. And I think he interposed a little bit too much of John into the equation. And you don't do that with the president. The president.
You have experience. You know what it's like to work for the president.
He is an incredibly decisive man. He likes to have the alpha males around him fight with each other to prove who has the best ideas. But at the end of the day, he makes the decision, not the national security advisor.
Right. And my experience, just to throw this in, because I worked with him on a book a few years ago, and it was a wonderful experience with the president back in 2011. And it was remarkable to me what a great seeker of information. He asked so many
devours information.
Absolutely, and that's another thing the left, tries to paint the opposite picture.
Well, it's
of
like
him, but it's not true.
We've seen this movie before,
Yeah,
right?
no.
It's Ronald Reagan.
Right,
The amiable dunce.
Right.
The amiable dunce who spent a decade going from GE plant to GE plant, giving speeches on free markets and democracy, which he researched and wrote.
Absolutely.
We've seen this playbook, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you even look at any of his speeches, they're remarkable.
Incredible.
And he did them all himself. So, okay, we're going to go to a few more
Thank
here.
you, Ted.
William in Belchertown, Massachusetts, not that far from where I grew up, says, this is good. How do we get Republican lawmakers to fight back and win these battles? We talked about this a little bit.
This is such an appalling reality of the last 3 years. There are several hundred people on Capitol Hill who have the letter R behind their name, and I ask you right now, how many of them have actually had the back of their president? I mean, we can make the list right now on a very small piece of paper. We're about 12 people. It will be Devin Nunes, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, Lee Zeldin, Matt Gaetz, Lindsey Graham, Liz Cheney. I mean, I'm almost exhausting it already.
Right.
Out of hundreds.
Right.
How do we get them to do it? How do you get a politician to do anything? You've got to make them afraid that they're not going to get reelected.
Exactly right.
You've got to send those messages, you've got to call them, you've got to email them. And ironically, you may not believe this in the 21st century, an old school letter written on paper, actually, it depends upon which office you deal with. They calculate that that is worth between 100 and 200 phone calls. They have an internal tab that, oh, you got 200 calls on this issue today, Congressman. Right. If you write a letter, they think that you've dedicated so much time to write that letter, they actually weigh that as much more important than dozens of phone calls. So write to your congressman, call their office, and make them understand what you need them to do.
Terrific. All right. Tammy in Dunlap, Tennessee wants to know, is there any chance, and then she says, please, that you'll return to the White House?
Look, I left because in the summer of 17, there were forces in the building that were not MAGA forces, if you know what I mean. And I told the president, and he agreed that I can best serve him on the outside. Now I have a national radio show with 2 million listeners across the country, an exploding YouTube channel, a new book. He agrees. He says yes. He's joked with me. I don't think I'm talking out of school that, you know, maybe I'll come back in the future. We've got 6 more years. Look, it's very simple. If he says come back, it's not an honor. It's an honor and a duty.
Obligation.
So we'll see. I'm not in a hurry because I love what I'm doing right now. But if the president needs me, he's got my number.
All right. Here's a very interesting one. I think this will be helpful to a lot of people. What do you think the most damning piece of evidence showing the scale of corruption is that you could tell someone who doesn't believe? How do we convince people?
Fabulous question. There's a technical one, and it's in the book. If somebody is of that intellectual curiosity, this is a very powerful one. How about this? When the intelligence community surveils somebody like a terrorist or a spy, if you as an American citizen crop up in the conversation, because of the Constitution, your identity is masked, okay? Because, you know, you cropped up by accident or an email chain or in a phone conversation, your identity, because there's no warrant against you, you haven't committed a crime, is hidden in the intelligence community. If there is a good reason, justifiable reason, that a senior member of the administration needs to know the real name of that person caught up in that surveillance, they can request over their signature to have that American individual's name unmasked. If you speak to professional intelligence operators who've been in the business for 30 years, you find it is an incredibly unusual occurrence. I've spoken to a DIA guy who, out of 32 years in the Defense Intelligence Agency, twice asked for an unmasking and had to justify it. In just the last year of the Obama administration, one member, Obama's UN ambassador, Samantha Power, requested the unmasking of more than 200 Americans. And she's not even a member of the intelligence community.
Oh, that's scary.
Why? Why? If you add 8 years of that up,
Right.
thousands of Americans were likely illegally unmasked. And guess what? One of them was Mike Flynn, whose identity, and this is a felony, was not only unmasked, was leaked to the media. That, for me, is
That's
proof
compelling.
enough.
It sure is. Wow. We have a couple of questions here on the financial side.
Yes.
Some folks asking, one question, do you think the national debt will be fixed in our generation? And another related, what can the Republican Party do to restore some financial, fiscal responsibility and budget discipline? How are we doing on that front?
I'm not copping out of answering, but will it be fixed? Look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You think they're going to fix it by themselves? Capitol Hill
have to
on both
hold them.
sides are like a bunch of drunken sailors on coke. I mean, seriously, how will they stop mortgaging your grandchildren, hawking them into penury, if you tell them to stop doing it? So the president is a businessman.
Yeah.
Waste drives him insane. But at the end of the day, we have separation of powers. Who has the purse strings? It's not the president. It's not the Senate. It's very
Right.
clear in our Constitution. It's the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
If you want to control the drunken sailors, we have to make them fear for their re-election in the House. It's up to us.
It is indeed. Here's an interesting question. Which section of the book was the most challenging to write?
That's a great question. The one that I had to do homework for was the chapter on the plotters. So I pretty much knew the Obamagate because I follow it every day, but the backstory of how we got here. So the real genesis
Yes.
of the modern left, the new left. So going back from Gramsci and on. But I had a great place to start because the most important book I've read in the last 10 years is Andrew Breitbart's autobiography, The Righteous Indignation. His
Great.
chapter 6 on where the new left comes from was my inspiration, and I give him full credit. We miss you, Andrew, but it's the chapter on how the new left did to us what they did.
Right. Very scary. And he was a visionary.
He was,
We
truly.
miss
And
him
we owe
greatly.
him so much.
We do. He was a great person
Great American.
too. All right, we're going to do a fun exercise. You
Uh-oh,
ready?
she's got the laminated
I
cards
do.
out.
I have the 22 questions in 2 minutes, and then I came up with a few fun ones on my own. So we'll
I'm a
see
radio guy.
where we go.
I don't answer 22. I can tell me hours.
That's true.
Do it.
All right, these are short and sweet.
All right.
Where were you born?
Ealing, West London.
Fun. And what's your favorite book?
Outside of the Bible, I think probably de Tocqueville's On Democracy.
Yes. How about your favorite movie?
Blade Runner.
Ah!
Easy, the greatest
No,
movie
my
ever
husband,
made.
That's a favorite of his too.
Good man.
All right, so here's a movie question. Who should play you in a movie about your life?
It would have been Russell Crowe, but he got a little porky. Russell, get back in the gym,
Russell Crowe
dude.
would be
Please,
excellent.
thank you.
That's hilarious. All right. What was your first job?
Saturdays, age like maybe it's 11 or 12, working in the best Polish deli in West London.
Oh, that's good.
Saturdays, it was fun.
That
Get those
sounds great.
great sandwiches, Polish, pierogi, you name it.
All right, well, then that leads to one of my questions
Yes.
here, not on the laminated card, but is what's the secret to making a great goulash?
Oh, super easy. Caraway seeds.
Caraway.
Nobody
Not
does
the
it
paprika.
properly. No, paprika's obvious.
Right.
Caraway seeds.
Okay.
And time. You cook it for 2-3 hours minimum.
I love
minimum.
it. That's
I'm
excellent.
giving away all my secrets,
I'm
Margie.
sorry. What is the one thing you need to have in your fridge at all times?
Really? Nutella. Have you ever eaten Nutella from the fridge?
Oh,
It's
okay.
you need it's like it's just good. Try it. Nutella
Right.
in the fridge.
I like it. All right. Describe
These are fun.
your ideal vacation.
Not the beach. I can't stand the beach. I mean, seriously, turning out like a lobster,
Right.
sand in your toes.
So,
Forests and mountains.
that's why you're coming to visit me.
Let's
Right?
do it.
In the country. If you could drive any car in the world, what would you drive?
I truly love my 2015 Mustang. It's one of the best cars I've ever had. But if money was no object and I didn't have a conscience, it would be a 1988 Aston Martin
Wow.
V8.
Aston Martin. Gotta love that. All right. If you could have a private lunch with anyone from history,
Oh my gosh.
who do you want to have lunch with?
Oh, outside of our Lord and Savior. Oh my gosh. That's tough. Probably Augustus. Probably Caesar Augustus.
I love that. Okay. Do you have any hidden talents?
Hidden talents.
Do you play the guitar?
I do not. I'm not musically inclined. Not too bad at woodwork. Not too bad of a gunsmith. I like to tinker with my guns. What else? I think that's about it. I'm a good dog walker as well.
Oh, excellent. Do you have dogs?
I have a fabulous dog, Killian, a Belgian Shepherd, a
Yes,
Tervuren.
that's right.
And in the past, Great Pyrenees. Love Great Pyrenees as well.
Terrific. How do you take your coffee?
I actually not a big coffee drinker. The only coffee I really like. I like tea. I have tea in the morning, but when I drink coffee, it has to be Turkish coffee. So I like, the proper grounds with the cardamom and the sugar. So medium Turkish coffee, love it.
Definitely. How about a guilty pleasure?
Chocolate.
Right.
So good. But it's got to be milk. None of that dark chocolate. I mean, that stuff is inedible, please. Come on.
I love dark
Milk
chocolate.
chocolate. No, ladies like the dark chocolate. I don't get it.
That's right. How about your favorite ice cream flavor?
My wife always gives me hell for this.
I'm ready.
Vanilla.
Oh!
I love vanilla.
Yeah, that she should give you hell for that. That's just boring. Sorry.
What can I do?
Right?
What can I do?
How about a pet peeve? What's your pet peeve?
People who make noises with their mouths. Like, people do,
Right.
it just drives
it's very
me
distracting,
nuts.
right?
And other people, how about this one? I was on a plane recently, the woman next to me was flossing her teeth on the plane. That's a good one, right?
Yeah, it never ceases to
And when I
amaze
made a
me.
comment, she was like,
What's the matter with you?
"You're flossing, there's a toilet right there."
Exactly. People do private things
Crazy.
in public.
Crazy.
It's become more common, right? All right. What's the one place you want to go that you've never been?
India. I did Japan.
Right?
Disappointed. I wanted to see, Clavel and Shogun, and it wasn't quite like that. India. I love Indian food.
I need to go to Israel. I have never
What?
been. Never been.
It's crazy.
I know.
Let's go. I'm going there next year.
Okay.
We're having a trip with Salem.
I might do
You
it.
coming?
Yeah, I
Let's
might
do
do
it.
it. That would be wonderful. Okay. And last but not least, bucket list. What do you have on your bucket list?
It's tough now because as a legal immigrant to the United States, I got to be deputy assistant to the most powerful man in the
Unbelievable,
world
right?
and walk around the White House wherever I wanted with my blue pass on. So what do you do now? I mean, you can have
Right.
a national
Can
radio
you top
show.
this? Well,
You can have
actually,
a best-selling book.
you could do those things.
Um,
That actually is my last question, which was a harder job? Working for the president, special assistant to the president, or host of a wildly popular
You want the
nationally
truth?
syndicated
You want the truth?
show.
Writing this book.
Writing the book. Yes, I have
Time.
a tough task now.
Time management. I sent a garbage manuscript a year ago, and I was so embarrassed, and I said, I know it's bad, but I need to get it under the wire. Then I spent the last six months rewriting it.
Yes.
In the modern age with these bloody things,
Right.
reading, let alone writing, you have to make a real effort. So
You do.
you know when you write books, if you ever want to write books, my friends, on planes that don't have Wi-Fi and you can't talk to anybody, that's where I write books.
That's wonderful. Well, we're very glad you wrote this one. I'm very glad you wrote this one.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much
Margie.
for doing this. Remember, premiercollectibles.com/Sebastian and Sebastian. Thank you so much.
And thank you for the great questions. Thank you, Margie. Thank you,
Terrific.
Regnery.
Well done.
Thanks.